So let's go ahead. So what we are going to discuss today broadly is, we'll start with very basic. Like first, let us understand and come at a common ground. What do we all understand by coaching styles? All of us might have a different definition in mind. So we'll see what we all understand as a coaching stance. What's the relation between coaching stance and an agile? So when we talk about agile, so we have to see, does it really mean different thing than what it is, or it has just a different connotation? Why the coaching stance is so important in agile, we'll briefly touch upon that. I'm going to talk about specifically, failed coaching stance. I came across a wonderful paper and I thought that let me convert this into a presentation topic. So there are many stories. There are a lot of literature, a lot of case studies, a lot of research articles available where we got a lot of data and metrics on failed agile transformations, but did not come across any similar material on coaching experiences. So there are some white papers available, but I really could not land on any one specific material where I could clearly, in quantifiable numbers say that, like for agile transformation in my previous webinar, if you attended that, almost close to 47% of agile transformation meet with failure than success. So that's quite a number. So we can relate that. This topic can definitely be related to that failure stories, but this could be more individual because this is to do with agile coaching and agile coaches in particular. So I could not, but then we can always allude to some of the other data, other information that is available in the public domain. So I will be bringing in the lot of people element, the element to do with about ourselves as coaches into this presentation, and then figure out the ways how we can recover from. If you have come across, if you have experienced a kind of a failed coaching stance, what does this mean, and then how do we recover from, right? So that will be largely the agenda for today's presentation. So what's a coaching stance in a nutshell? Before I begin, I'd like to hear from anyone, what is your understanding? Whenever this word rings in your ear, what kind of images does it throw up in your mind? Can anyone share your thoughts? What according to you is a coaching stance? I already opened up a conversation by highlighting the first bullet point on the slide. Any technical definition, non-technical definition would suffice.
I mean, basing on the team you're dealing with, so what kind of role and behavior you would adapt?
Exactly. Thanks, Bala. That was wonderful. Yeah. So yeah, this is not anything I'm looking for IEEE or any standard-based definition because there is no standard as such still for the coaching profession. But coaching stance, suffice to say that it's how the coach position himself vis-a-vis his colleagues, client, student, what we call it, or the team or the organization, depending on the scale and the size of the engagement that the coach is having with his potential client. Here, the client word will be often used. The client would interchangeably mean one-on-one interaction with a person, with the coach is helping his or her coachee, or it could be in the context of agile coach, a group of teams, or even in a large department or organization in itself. So rightly said, Bala. Thanks. So it's a very basic, very generic definition. It's just the way you position yourself, right? And then we'll see what elements of different practices come into the play. We will look into that in further slides. And this coaching stance may vary depending upon the situation. It's like six thinking hats, right? Something similar to that kind of a paradigm. So today you see a situation hot, you will pick up a different stance, which will help you manage that situation. If the situation is cool, you may put on a different hat or different stance. So it depends upon the situation around yourself. And the coaches pick up a particular stance to help their clients, whether to achieve results or to help them grow. So they have a dual objective or a singular objective. Either their aim is to help the clients grow. It is like forward approach where your focus is on helping the client grow in their business, in their specific domain, or to achieve results. If there are certain goals or objectives being set, how we can help them achieve those results or outcomes that you're looking for. Most of the assignments, as you know, are always tied with some kind of an outcomes. There's an expectation from the client side and also from your side as a coach that you would like to see certain results and outcome from this engagement. So you are equally focused on results, achieving results, as well as also focus on helping the client grow. As for the agile competency framework, which was developed by Lisa Atkins and Michael Scott more than a decade ago, this coaching science is their term is the heart of the coaching conversation. Whether you're having this conversation one-on-one with your coachee, or you're having this conversation with your client, with your, teams, group of agile teams, scrum teams, or other such entities. So this is considered the heart of the coaching conversation. It is possible for coach to lose his or her coaching stance due to various factors. Even though I did not find any quantifiable data, quantitative data to say that okay, X number of percentage coaches fail in their assignments. Even a lot of surveys have been done. The Business Agility Institute also has done some surveys. Scrum Alliance also has done some surveys. So there are various dimensions coming out in form of results outcomes, whether the coaches, how can we say whether the coach are successful in their engagements or they're not so successful. But it is possible for a coach to lose his or her stance due to various factors. We'll look at these various factors in the upcoming slides. However, it's not a kind of a doomsday prediction. You can always come back, right? If you are resilient enough, you can always recover or redeem yourself from that situation. And how you can do that, we'll also have a look at that in the upcoming slides. Before I move forward, anyone has to share any thought, any experience at this stage? Please feel free. This is not going to be a big topic today. Okay, all good. Let's go ahead. So I picked up this nice picture 3x3 box from a paper here, as you can see. There's a paper, Principles and Dynamics of Matching Role to Situation by three people, Douglas Champion, David Keel, and Gene McClendon. They describe 9 such stances which help the client grow. So if you see here how these stances are organized, on the x-axis you have responsibility for client results. So more the right-hand side you are there, these stances help, primarily help in driving the client results. And on the y-axis, you have responsible client growth. So higher up along this axis, if you look at the particular stance, you see that these have a major impact on driving the client growth. Whereas this side, there's a major impact on driving the client results. So let us pick up anyone. Let's say you are a partner, right? When you are in the partners, when you pick up a partner stance. So this is something like a strategic business partnership, right? You are engaging in a kind of a partnership with your client, and you have agreed on some kind of a contract, what you call a coaching contract, with a view to achieve certain desired outcomes. It could be in form of SMART goals or any particular OKRs or objectives that you've defined, which you try to achieve over a period of time. So this is treated as a kind of a partnership. When you're putting on this stance as a partner, you are actually focusing on both growth as well as results. So with this stance, you are impacting both in the growth area as well as the results area. However, if you're picking up a stance, let's say you're playing the role of a reflective observer, as Bala just mentioned, right? Depending on the situation, what you're doing is you're just observing, you're taking notes, you're watching the team from a distance. You say you do it and I will watch you. And you're taking notes, and from time to time, you are sharing your observations. Now, again, the risk here is that observation should not be should not hide behind the any critical remarks that you have to make. So your critique should not be camouflaged by observation. So if you have to critique something, that has to be explicitly spelled out. But here, what happens is you're not that much engaged in driving either the result or growth. So this is a very kind of a passive role that you're playing here. What you're doing at the best is you're just taking notes, observation, and sharing those. It is left to the team to take any action on your observation. So let's say if you've given any critical remarks or observation, you leave it to the team to figure out whether they would draw up any action plan for bringing out certain changes based on your recommendation or observation. Some of the most frequently used stances for agile coaches are along this axis here. You see facilitator, teacher, mentor. Of course, as a professional coach, you have a big role to play, and this is where you impact, where the maximum impact you create is in terms of the growth as well as the result. But partnership, when you are a partner, you are actually going along the journey, on the journey, the strategic vision that the company has outlined to become the part and parcel of their growth journey. and along the journey, you also give your valuable contribution. But again, you're not taking any interest. You are just playing the role of a facilitator, or you're playing the role of a external coach, external agent. Your only interest is in success of your client, right? You do not take any credit for yourself. So I'm going to talk about some of these attributes also in the upcoming slides. That the the very vital aspects of coaching role is that to ensure the be active with the client's agenda, not your agenda. You're not running your agenda. You're not looking at your personal success or personal glory. You're always keen and focused on helping the client be successful, whatever the vision they have carved out for themselves, whatever the objectives and goals that they set for themselves. You help them achieve those goals and objectives. Anyone has any thoughts to share on this? This is going to be a very interesting topic, as we move along. I would just like to uh, pause here and then seek your input, your experience. What stance you like acquired, or did you adopt a stance? Like, did you take up a visionary stance, or an advisor stance, or a hands-on expert? Anyone, please feel free to share your experience.
Hiren, yeah, can you hear me, Hiren?
Hi, Ashutosh. Very good evening. How are you
Yeah,
doing?
doing great. So
Good,
something
good.
interesting I would like to share rather than talking about a stance. So I entered into a coaching engagement more like a reflective observer,
Mm-hmm.
but ended up becoming a coach there. I mean, so that was the journey which I actually had to do it. I mean, it was kind of never expected that I would stay there for long.
Mm-hmm.
It was just that
Interesting.
they wanted to observe things, right? Just tell us what is right, what is wrong, and exit out, right? I mean, it was supposed to be around a couple of weeks engagement, ended up being almost a year-long
Year
engagement
long.
where, and I did not even realize. I mean, subconsciously it happened. Like, I mean, that is one experience I can definitely talk about. I mean,
And what kind of others did you also experience picking up any other stance that
yeah,
you
so
can
it was a
see here?
zigzag across this diagram. So from
Okay.
reflective observer to teacher, obviously, that was but obvious, right? I mean, they said that, okay, you start teaching us, then facilitator, and then again, not a visionary, of course, but I mean, it was a zigzag kind of a journey
Zigzag
to
kind of thing.
reach
Yeah,
that
sure. Yeah, yeah.
coach thing. I don't even
So
know
again, as
now.
the situation was unfolding in front of your eyes, you
Correct,
were
correct.
observing and then you picked up a stance. So
So
let's say, when
actually,
did
it
you pick up
started
a?
with a yeah,
Hmm.
sorry for interrupting. It started with an escalation from the client, and I always say, right? I mean, they only remember coaches when there's an escalation from the client, right? And they said that,
Brilliant
okay, you
point.
come and handle this escalation for 2 weeks, but then, as I said, that it went into a zigzag fashion right up to the coach level.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very delicate path that a coach has to tread, right? Because coach is always, I would say, there to cater to the client's agenda. So you cannot
Hmm.
say no.
Correct,
And
correct.
there are sometimes quite overbearing pressures also from the client side. I am paying you, so I want you to get this thing done. So you do what I say. Sometimes you have those kind of expectations also from the client side. No, you mentioned wonderful journey. So this is what happens in every coach's journey or their experience, right? No matter what the size and duration of the engagement, I'm sure you would be going through multiple situations where you may have to think, okay, today now I'm playing the role of a mentor. Tomorrow I might have to play the role of a teacher, right? So it is also important to understand what is the situation. First, you analyze what's the situation around you unfolding, and then according to that situation, you have to pick up a particular stance. So I was very interested when you said teacher, right? So what is the stance of a teacher? Teacher is something that I am sharing some knowledge, or I'm giving some imparting some knowledge. So how do you decide that you realize that, okay, fine, there is a lack of knowledge in this area, particular area. Let's say you realize that this team is very, very new to Scrum, so first they need to understand basics of Scrum. So you may start with Scrum ceremonies or Scrum roles and try to take them team on that journey of knowledge. You pass on the knowledge to them. So that's where the teacher stance comes into play, right, Ashutosh? An advisor is something like, I often look at this stance by trying to answer that question for me. What is the best advice that I ever get or have ever got? So I look back into my career and see that there were some instances where I got some wonderful advices from well-meaning people, right? From my either my colleagues or my bosses or my leaders. So as an advisor, the team will expect you to give guidance in terms of what should be done, what shouldn't be done given a situation. So depending on the situation, a coach will pick up a particular stance. Thank you, Ashutosh, for those wonderful experience that you shared. Anyone else has anything else to share? This is really very interesting topic. I can vouch for it. I'm sure even though you may not be playing the role of a coach as a formal title, you may be a leader or you may be a manager or any other role or title that you are having in your organization. I'm sure you must be wearing one of these hats every day. Either you are playing the role of a facilitator, when you have to when you have to get the group of people together in form of a meeting, and you are trying to navigate uh, through the various situation. There's some kind of a conflict arising around, and you're trying to help the teams navigate through this situation of conflict and reach a consensus. So it's a very key role. Facilitation skills are in great demand, right? Whenever there's a situation where there's a agreement has to be arrived at, where there's a consensus has to be built, a decision making process has to be facilitated, then this key skill comes into play. Before I move on, anyone would like to share his or her experience from your work or outside of your work also? As parents also, we are sometimes, play these different roles. When the kids are young, we play a different role. When the kids are grown up, then we prefer to play a different kind of a roles, right? Even with our spouses and our friends and colleagues. Okay, so all right. Thanks, Ashutosh. That was quite a good experience to relate to. Now, I would like to bring your attention to this Agile Coaching Competency Framework, again, referring back to Lisa Atkins and Michael Spett from Agile Coaching Institute more than a decade ago. So they came up with a framework. So this is not a model, because when you talk about model, you talk about guidelines and rules and regulations and definitions, very, very specific definitions. Like if you talk about ICF, International Coaching Federation, they have a model. They have a competency model where they have clearly outlined behavioral guidelines. If and only if you exhibit and demonstrate these behaviors, you are at a certain level of competency. So here there are major 4 quadrants. I'm sure all of you would have seen this before. So this is where you, as a coach, you play the role of, you uh, hold the process on behalf of your client, right? You're not trying to show your expertise here. Rather, you utilize your expertise in helping with the process harmonization for your client. So as a professional coach and as a facilitator, you are a neutral process holder who guides the group through processes that help them come to solutions and make decisions. So this is more of a process area, right hand side, whereas the teaching and the mentoring competencies relate to more of the content, where you pass on your content. So teacher, if you remember in the previous slide, I talked about instructing others in specific knowledge, skills, and perspective. So this is where you share your content. Here on this side, you're not focused on the content at all. When you're facilitating a meeting, you're not at all interested in the content, though you may be observing, taking notes, but your objective is not to get engaged, get involved at the content level. You're only facilitating the process, try to improve the processes, or try to bring about a process harmonization with the agile process model, whichever agile process model you are following. And what Lisa Atkins and Michael Spett, they hinted at this domain. This is the another major quadrant where they expect agile coach to have at least one of the expertise or mastery in one of these domain areas, and that depends highly on majorly on the business context and the organizational context. So if you are playing the role of a change agent, then your transformation master will come to the fore. So change management, org development, and certain other behavioral aspects. Because when you go through the change, you talk about like mindset change, orienting from one way of working to the new way of working. So you take the people along that journey of transformation. So your transformation mastery will play a major role here. If there is something to do with the business domain, like for example, business strategy development, business strategy orientation, product innovation, product development, then your business master will come to the fore. Similarly, if you are running any architectural workshop or as a DevOps or DevSecOps expert, you are helping the teams or organization on architectural evolution, then your technical mastery. So this depends on the domain. We prefer to stick to the software, but this is software agnostic. This can be applicable in other industrial domains as well. most of the agile coaches, they start their journey. Most of the scrum masters who step into the role of agile coach, junior coaches, and they have a very long way to go. They always start with as a agile lead practitioner. So here your focus is on, start with the real understanding. This comes in two parts. First is the knowledge, and the second is the application. So before you focus on application, first you focus on acquiring the knowledge. So my suggestion, advice to any budding agile coach or coach who's on the path of evolution of becoming and acquiring more and more mastery in their trade and profession is to first have a good distillation of agile values and principles, have a very thorough grounding in, as some of us can relate, right? So before we coach others, we have to have a good grounding in these agile values and principles, and then try to see based on situation how these can be applied. Because every engagement, every situation has its own challenges and opportunities. So you have to analyze to what level you have to apply whatever that you have learned. Anyone would like to share any experience or any thoughts on this slide? Because here, this at the center is a culmination of all these 8 competencies, and you may have a mixed bag. You may be a good in teaching and mentoring, but if you have to deliver, if you have to execute on your coaching assignment, we need to have a portion of each one of these as part of your skill repertoire. So you, like a good archer has all types of arrows in his quiver, so you need to have each of these different combinations, and these are all complementary competencies, by the way. Any thoughts? Anyone like to share any experience or thought on this slide? So this is a nice graphic here. It is a question, if you see from this gentleman here, what is your T shape here? So it could be a deep T, it could be a broad T, depending on how deep you are into a particular domain, or you are very good at professional coaching or facilitating. So you are focusing primarily on the process aspect, or you're focusing on content, being a teacher or a mentor. So far, so good. You're with me. Any questions for me? All right. So this, why I brought this slide is because each of these competency also help you acquire an appropriate stance. Your coaching stance, it depends on your own personal skills, your own knowledge, your expertise in this particular domain that makes up your stance. So why this coaching stance is so important in Agile, right? So if I say that a better team facilitation and coaching leads to better outcomes in terms of effective practice at a team level. Let's say you are operating at a team level. You have been asked to help and guide a team, first establish some good practices, and then they will evolve, into a better team, into a high performing team. Yes, if you're having good team facilitation skills and coaching skills, and it will definitely lead to better outcomes at a team level. And if you take this across teams, then definitely it will better outcomes at scale. Group of teams evolve with improved practices. So same thing you apply to set of teams. So as a coach, what typically we do is we start with a set of pilot teams first initially. We would like to run a pilot, see the results, and then try to expand it to a larger group of teams after observing the results, and we would like to make some changes. So you see, when you expand this, you see improved practices evolving at scale, and definitely at org level, at an enterprise level, it will lead to better outcomes spread across the whole enterprise. So Ashutosh, you are an enterprise agile coach. I'm sure you would see that in an incremental way, you first start your engagement with a set of teams. You try to establish a team at a certain level of maturity, and then take them along this transformation journey, and then you see over a period of time, you start to see better results across the whole enterprise. So
Yeah.
that's why it has very strategic importance in the world of agile.
Yeah. So
Agree,
Hiren,
disagree? Yes, please.
yeah, Hiren, on the LinkedIn Live, Saibal is asking the question, as a coach, how to influence businesses who's reluctant on any change like adopting scaled agile network framework?
Yeah, good question. I think this is not an uncommon question, Vijay. We know that, right? This question
Yeah.
So if the business are reluctant, it's difficult to convince a reluctant business. Again, as a coaching competency framework, the recommendation from Lisa Atkins and Michael Spade and others who have come up with a better models and frameworks later on after this framework was announced. So we have to always be with the client. As a coach role is to run the client agenda, not your agenda. It should not be your agenda to force them on the agile transformation, right? First, you understand the problem. What's the problem being discussed here? What's the organizational context? Why they are in this kind of a situation? Agile, going to agile is not the solution in any ways. So you have to first figure out what's the context, what would be the appropriate way to approach that problem, from which direction, and what would be the tools and techniques and methods to be adopted to use to solve the problem first. So having a proper understanding, get along with your client, have a better understanding about what the problem they are facing, and then you can suggest some remedies and recommendations. Forcing agile would be the last item on that to-do list actually. That would be my proposal. If anyone else has a better proposition, please bring it up here or share from your side. Vijay, anything from your side on that?
Oh yeah, I would say basically it depends. I mean, I also asked Sable the same question over LinkedIn, that what is the exact situation? So if it is before the SAFe is implemented or any framework that is implemented, if the acceptance is not there, then that's a different situation altogether. The stance is different.
Yes,
then you
stance
will,
has to be different.
yeah, you'll try to convince the ROI or something like that. As also SAFe says, you have to be there on the tipping point. Once you're on the tipping point, it becomes really easy to convince.
Yeah.
But if you're already adopted or accepted that framework and then you are not doing it, it means that there's a different stance that you need to.
It's a different stance
How?
altogether.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you've started on a journey and then you're not seeing the correct results.
Yeah.
I have a small reference to that in the upcoming slide. So if Sable can hold on to his
Sure.
question,
Okay.
yeah. This is where the failed coaching stance. I was very interested to bring up this topic for today's presentation. Yeah, moving along. So let's say if you are a coach, you're a practicing coach or an agile practitioner, let's for that better not even put a title of coach on your head. But since this is about coaching stance, so we will assume for all practical purposes that you are in one way or the other playing the role of a coach. If you feel drained of energy, you lack motivation to continue working, if you have to sell changes every time, have you been in this kind of situation? I'm asking you. Have you ever felt this kind of situation for yourself, or you have seen someone else in your circle going through this motions? I really want to talk to someone. Go ahead, please.
I have failed.
Yeah.
I have felt.
I think all of us have gone through this at least once in our career.
Yeah. Most of the, I would say, all of it. All
Yeah.
the symptoms
Very nicely said, Sally. Yeah. Go ahead.
So one by one, if you see, the first thing, the leadership was not sold. I mean, they themselves were confused whether they really want to go adopt agile or they want to go with the the traditional way. They were really confused. So both of us were on the project, rather are still on the project. So
very good point.
I'm fighting my way to get through. We need to at least have a standoff. So basic things, and then when then clearing the why, and after 6 months also project is still struggling because they have adopted the parallel way also to define the scope of the project. So
this is tough. Yeah.
Very tough. So now,
tough.
This has started draining my energy, and fortunately, but then you have to find that window when, the parallel project manager is not there, and then you chip in there and do a retrospective, and when people say, now we are bored, nothing is happening, we do not have any deliverables. So where you get a chance to say, okay, where this is the time where you understand, then why not try the agile way of working? And maybe that's the different stance that needs to be taken now for me.
I really like to thank you, Sally, because you're speaking from the heart. I can feel that, and you already spoken some of the points for my next slide. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anything further, Sally?
Not really. So still experimenting.
So difficult, right?
Looking, yes, it is very.
Sometimes we
stressful.
we question our own credibility. Sometimes we question our own knowledge and skills. That am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right
Exactly.
place?
Yes.
Am I with the right people? These kind of questions start popping up when you come across this kind of a situation.
Right.
And this is when you really want to talk to someone who understands you, right? Okay,
Right. And it's a
can I
dilemma
make myself
also.
clear?
At times I feel it's not that from the agile perspective, I feel like, okay, go and fail. I want to see that you fail and then you come back
Mm.
to me. Inside I'm saying this, but my other mind is also saying, no, as a project or as an organization, I don't want them to fail also.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful.
Because we are losing on time, we are losing on business. This should not
Yes.
happen. So there
So
comes
you
a
are
time where
struggling
you
between an opportunity and equally and the challenge on the both the side, right? So
right.
which one
Yeah.
shall I pick up here? Wonderful point.
Yeah, yeah.
This is wonderful, Sari. Wonderful
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
And Hiren, I would say that if we actually connect this with any of the sports, rather, say for an example, cricket.
Yes.
Rahul Dravid, the name you name this name, and then everybody would say, "What a great cricketer!" But someday he had gone through literally a
Rough
bad patch.
lean patch. Yeah, yeah.
He was really a great cricketer. I mean, never really came a bad patch in his life, I would say. But the moment the format changed, he was actually struggling. His style was different.
He was built and designed for a particular format, and then this format changed, so he could not adjust, or maybe he thought, maybe in his mind he thought that he's not designed for this particular format.
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful observation.
Also, if you are into the country that has a lot of cultural background, and you're kind of people who are who need to implement certain practices. Like if in India we are really competitive, our parents right in the beginning used to say that, oh, how many marks you have got in your studies, and your kid says, say 10 marks. Okay, then the next question that they would ask is, how much your friend got? That's the very next question that comes in. So we are really that competitive. It also depends on what kind of environment that you're watching.
What's your surroundings?
Exactly.
What's
So
your
for an
context?
example, if you're coming from that country as a coach, your stance would be influenced by that style itself.
Your mental makeup, your upbringing,
Exactly,
your
exactly.
culture, the milieu that you come
Yes.
from, right?
Now, when I'm hiring coaches for different clients, I see what is the situation there, and based on that, that is your style that matches to this kind of environment, and then the failure chances are very less because your style matches or your stance matches. Yeah.
So you're also bringing up some of the point which kind of allude to why this happens, right? So I'm going to talk about why this happens in the next slide.
Yeah. And every time you will see that a lot of coaches will say people don't listen.
Yes.
And there are many a times you don't really take that right stance, or you're
maybe your stance is not correct. That's why it could be
absolutely.
you have not judged the situation so well. Maybe you have not been listening, or you have not been so attentive that you were so lost in your own thoughts.
Yeah. So you as a coach also need to learn a lot of things.
So absolutely.
I mean, second your thought that this is a really important topic that you have chosen. So very serious. Yeah, sure.
Very serious, very interesting, very close to your heart, like if you're in this profession, and I'm sure that no coach would have been without his or her challenge.
Absolutely.
And their daily challenges, their monthly challenges, their annual challenges. Yeah. All right, go ahead. Thanks, Vijay. That was very fantastic. I really like that. So these are all the kind of feelings that you go through, right? I feel lonely and lost in vacuum. I feel that I'm about to burn out. I feel a sense of hopelessness. And it could get extreme that, kind of so discharged that you need a good recharge. How? So first, let us understand that why this happens. So field of agile practitioners is still in its infancy. Why I say this, that, when I was doing this research, I found that it's been more than 2 decades since we had Agile 1.0. We had this Scrum Alliance coined Agile Values, Agile Manifesto in 2001, more than 2 decades, but still the field of Agile practices is in its infancy. Some of the professions are still not very standardized. Even though we have competency framework, not so close to a competency model per se. So this is still wide open. And how would you really assess a coach as a really highly competent? There's no specific way to still to do that, right? And companies also taking coaches for jolly rides, right? Sorry to say that, but I related to early days of therapists. And when this, in the medical profession, when this psychotherapist and this new professions started to come about with based on new research, in the early days, most of these therapists were seen with, I would say, not so high regards, because companies did the general public wide public did not really trust them. But the therapists themselves believe that they're really good. They are really good in their art and profession. They have all the required knowledge and skills, and they can treat patients very well. But then it was not so really great. So this still is going on in the world of agile, that you may start with some certification, and that's what I'm going to talk about here. That's not your gateway to glory and success. You've got lots of practice with tons of certifications, but what really makes you effective coach or pick up an effective stance is your own sense of awareness, your high degree of consciousness about learning from what others are experiencing. Not only learn from your own lessons, from your own experience, but learn from others' experiences, learn from others' failures. That's why, as a effective coach would really look at the case studies, success case studies and failure case studies of other people, other enterprises, other organizations. Learn from others' mistakes. Yeah, so just having a certification is not entitling you to a high career as an agile coach. It comes through years and years of practice. And plus, practitioners face lots of pressure from employers, as Harry just mentioned, right? So there's immense pressure, there's immense mental pressure. So when you are into that pressure zone, as Ashutosh also mentioned, right? A small assignment of 2 weeks or 3 weeks got extended up to 1 year with increasing expectations every month. Mismatch between skills and expectation, right? This often happens here. No formal criteria or standard for agile practitioners, even though we may claim to have arrived quite far from the early days of agile, but still I think there's no formal criteria standard for agile practitioners. Yeah, we have certification bodies, we have frameworks, but then we do not have like competency model like for other professions like chartered accountants and medical professions. No or very little empowerment authority, even though you may like to exercise authority, but you're not being empowered enough by your client to exercise your authority. So that leaves you high and dry, and you feel even more frustrated. And there's also a lot of abuse going on, right? More often than not, like practitioners are expected to fix the team or fix teams, which results is also known as scrum abuse. Sally, you would now relate to these points? You would like to say anything further?
Nothing to add. You said everything.
Everything, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there are more points, but I just thought these are just on the surface, but deep down below, you will find more and more ramifications, in terms of how do you really feel and why it happens, if it happens. Okay, all right, going further. So what's the impact? Obviously, this is going to have an impact on you as an individual. If you've been going through these feelings, so yeah, you may feel lonely, you may feel that, okay, there's no one to speak to. You may also have kind of distortion of your professional identity. On your LinkedIn profile, it looks really good that I'm an agile coach, 20 years experience, multiple worked on multiple engagement assignments. But because of one failure or one story not going right, we feel like it's all over. And in the eyes of your colleagues and other people, you may start to lose your credibility also. Constant conflict with an environment that denies your values, right? You have over the years acquired a lot of knowledge, skills, experience that you like to share, but then there's a conflict. It's like at cross purposes with the environment that you are in, that there's a conflict going on between the environment and what you value the most. The evaluation of you and your work, your professional identity is question mark, feeling of aimlessness and meaningless of your work. So when you go through this kind of situation where you're not able to rise to the occasion, or you may have did not have a success with your engagement, with your relationship, even though your relationship also takes a beating, then you end up having this kind of impact upon yourself, and this is really getting worse. Why I say worse? Because may actually end up with visiting to a doctor if things really get worse, leading to a burnout. So anyone can relate to this? Anyone like to share, or any who have observed this kind of similar symptoms in anywhere across your throughout your experience? But you can definitely relate to this. We all often go through this, even in our personal space as well. It's to do with it because coach has to keep the relationship with the client highly sanctimonious, right? It's uh, the coaching profession is between the coach and his or her client, and the relationship is paramount. So the impact is quite obvious, and impact, if it is not remedied in time, then it can lead to even worse situations. So how we can turn around the situation here? Let's look at that. So before I go to that turnaround, what's the overall impact? If you see this slide, you see this was with a desired path, desired trajectory. If things have been going on well, we would continuously, generating more and more high value over a period of time. And along the value, the company, the team, the organization also would be improving. Their maturity would be increasing gradually. But since we had a failed coaching stance, things did not turn out the way they ought to be. So we start to see a derived, uh, different path. So derived value, there's a big gap between the actual value and the supposed predetermined value that we had anticipated at the beginning of this journey. This deviation nullifies all the effort. So the overall agile wasn't worth it. Over a period of time, this price kind of drags down everyone. It creates widespread frustration. It's like kind of a failed project story, right? So when my experience, I like to tell you that when I was talking to one of my leaders in a previous organizations, I was told that the best way to learn is to learn from failures. And if you have not encountered any failure, it means that you have not learned in your life. So this should become the stepping stones, but then they should help you also recollect, regain your coaching stance. So why we end up in this kind of situation? Can we prevent this from happening in the future? That should be our focus. That should be our goal. Any questions, anyone on this slide before I move on? I'm just also doing a time check. We have other things to cover. All right. So how can we recover this coaching stance? Yes, this is definitely possible. It's not all lost out. We can definitely redeem. So if you are having good resilience, you can always bounce back. And there are always great comebacks in life. You talked about sports, Vijay. Uh, Even Sachin also had to go through a rough patch, right? If you look at his checkered career, 23 years, he had his highs and ups and downs, and he was able to bounce back. So how can we regain your coaching stance, right? Let's look at first, we have to help ourselves. Before we look at any competency model or competency framework, the first thing I would recommend is to first collect yourself, gather yourself. The kind of emotional turmoil that you're going through, you have to first gather yourself, collect your thoughts. Maybe you can take a break. The first thing I would suggest is to help yourself. Get yourself a mentor. If you can find a buddy or a friend who you trust, who can help you, get yourself a mentor who can help you get out of this situation. Also find help within the community or within the company you're working. If you're working in a company, you know there are trustworthy people who can help you. Reach out to them and talk about your situation with them and see what kind of professional help or even personal help you can get from your community. So there are a lot of community groups are available, even on WhatsApp and other social media. There are lots of community groups, so you can join the community, or if you're already existing member of any community, you can post your query, and I hope that you get a good response to your query. Engage in community events and meets up. So try to share your experience, share your and see that how others relate to that your experience. Others would be happy to share their experience in response to your story. So engage in community events, meetups. For example, attend a webinar like this, attend a webinar, Agile webinar, or any other community forums or events are coming up in your area where you can join. Please engage in the community events and meets up and try to mingle with the like-minded people. Detoxify your mind, spirit, pick up a book, listen to music, take a short break, go for a vacation, get some fresh air. So first is look at your ongoing mental and physical health. Get your health in shape. If required, go for a health checkup. I recently took a health checkup and was happy to see good results coming out. And by grace of God, nothing to worry. So take or take a therapy for that matter. You can nowadays a lot of therapies are available. Look at your diet plan, see if you are lacking any nutrients. Nowadays, a lot of vitamins are essential for our good mental and even our entire health is driven by a lot of chemicals inside our body. I mean, I have worked in healthcare domain, so I can relate to that. A lot of nutrients and healthy diet can help you have a good positive outlook, positive mindset, positive way of life. Any suggestions, any further thing you would recommend here? Anything that you think I have missed out here in this slide? This is the first step. Then I'm going to talk about the next step in the next slide. Do you think this is relevant? This you can relate to this? This is the way to recover from a failed situation.
Yeah, very much.
Very much. Okay, thanks, Vijay. All right, so across all the models that I researched, I found this simple model called Clear. Has anyone heard about this Clear coaching model? What this model is about? Anyone who has heard this before? This is way back by Peter Hawkins in early 80s. He created this Clear coaching model. Ashutosh, you heard about this before?
I think Ashutosh had to leave. He
Oh,
has
had to leave.
something.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, I'm not seeing the audience here.
yeah.
Yet. All right, thanks, Vijay. Thanks for clarifying that. So let's move ahead. So this is an acronym, Clear. The first C stands for contract. So now once you have been able to gather yourself, now you're having a fresh mind. It's kind of you've left behind those ugly moments, those ugly incidents behind your back. Now you're ready to start afresh with a fresh outlook, with a positive attitude, positive mindset. So start again fresh. I would say with a very simple model called Clear. Start with the coaching agreements. Get in touch with your coachee or with your teams and come to an agreement on what are the business outcomes or any kind of a goals or objectives that we would like to agree on. So start with that basic step first on a coaching agreement, not like a written contract, but definitely some kind of an agreement. And then once you start your coaching engagement with your coachee or with your teams, ask probing questions and listen. This is the most important skill, I would say. In any profession, I think listening skills are vital. So this is cannot be overestimated in this particular profession of agile coaching. So listen and show empathy, right? Ask probing questions that will generate insights, the questions that will lead to discovery, the questions will open up coach's mind for exploring further possibilities. So listen attentively, listen actively, and then explore. So now this can be in two steps. First is to explore where your coach is getting blocked. Number one, try to attempt to find out those areas, right? By asking probing questions or exploratory questions. As you know, in ICF terminology, we call it like your ability to ask powerful questions, right? That leads to more discovery, that leads to more information, that leads to more possibilities. So, and then together with your coach, you dive deeper into topics raised and help the coach find out way for creating an action plan. That's the next step. So help your coachee commit to like taking an action towards a goal. So whatever the areas that have been discovered and have been identified in the previous step, identify what kind of action plan. And this is where you have to help your coachee commit to this, taking these actions. And once the actions are taken, jointly review, assess the progress regularly with your coachee and review whether the progress has been made or not. So this is what the clear coaching model is about. The simplest model you can start, and this is the way for you to regain your coaching stance. Any questions on this? Any impressions? Any thoughts? Looks good. Okay. All right. So we are at the end of the session. So conclusion is that there are many stances a coach can take. A coach should always analyze the situation well before taking a stance. We already covered that. Again, coaching stance from Agile Coaching Institute. The work of Agile coach may become manipulative, ideological, and driven by the coach's own desires. So this you have to really be careful that it should not be become a pursuit of your own agenda, but it should be pursuit of the client's agenda. Even though your desires are seemingly benign and believed to be in best interest of the client. So you have to tread a careful path here in ensuring that it is a client's agenda that you're running, not your own agenda. And by taking a stance that is appropriate with the case, the coaches will be able to help their clients more effectively and lead a happy and successful life and career. Right. So with this, I end my session here. Any questions for me? So Vijay, over to you.
Sure, bang on time, 8:30. Absolutely. That's
But I'm happy that I brought this topic because sometimes these kind of topics become taboo for us to discuss in open
yeah.
forums. But I nevertheless thought that why not talk about some of the sensitive stuff as well.
Yeah.
I hope people would have enjoyed
Yeah.
going through the presentation material.
Just one addition might be I would like to